toolbox. So the next four presentations will be given by Janice, Spence, Julie Boutin, Myriam Talantikit. And so I'm going to introduce them together and then pass over to them. So firstly, Janice. Janice Spence is a Senior Standards Specialist at the Canadian Standards Release Centre in Canada Health InfoWay. Janice has over 20 years' experience in health information management, health informatics, and data integrity management, as well as interoperability standards development and application at both provincial and national levels. She is a health terminology standards subject matter expert with a specialisation in SNOMED CT. Janice is a SNOMED CT certified level 2 content author, and she represents Canada on SNOMED International's member forum and its content managers and e-learning advisory groups. Janice has a Bachelor of Science. She is a CCHIM certified health information management professional, a certified terminology standards specialist, a certified professional in health information management systems, and is FHIE R4 certified. So Janice is going to start us off with an overview of health data, health information exchange standards, and talk about the role that terminology and data exchange standards play in interoperability. She's then going to come back and tell us about Canada Health InfoWay's terminology server. Next, we're going to have Julie Boutin. Julie and I have been working together for a while on the Canadian Medicines Terminology Project, or the CMT, so it's really lovely to have Julie here to talk to us about this today. Julie is a Senior Standards Specialist at the Canadian Standards Release Centre in Canada Health InfoWay. Julie has over 20 years' experience in healthcare and government, including laboratory information systems and implementing standards to support health information systems. Julie is a SNOMED CT certified level 2 content author and one of Canada's NRC representatives on SNOMED International's member forum, the Content Managers Advisory Group, and the French Translation Collaboration Group. Julie also has a graduate diploma in health informatics from the University of Sherbrooke. And finally, we have Myriam Talantikit, who will tell us about how InfoWay supports the SNOMED CT immunisation content. Myriam is a standards specialist with the Canadian Standards Release Centre at Canada Health InfoWay. She has a Bachelor in Microbiology and Immunology and a Master in Public Health with a specialisation in epidemiology surveillance. So she brings this expertise to the vaccine-related content in SNOMED CT. Myriam is a SNOMED CT certified level 1 content author with a Master of Science and MBA. So as you can see, we have a lot of expertise in the room, and I will pass the floor now over to Janice, Julie, and Myriam for the next four presentations. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Dr. Bird. So I'll start off this section by going a little bit into a review of some of the key interoperability standards that we support here at InfoWay for national use, and how they interplay with our overarching goal of interoperability. Next slide. Thank you. So on this slide, I'm trying to depict a story for you as we talk about different levels of interoperability and what they mean, and how actually standards are actually sort of synced to ensure that these different levels are achieved. And interoperability in healthcare and how the standards enable those different levels is, I think, a key component of why we do what we do here at Health InfoWay. So effective delivery of care requires interoperability, which essentially is the seamless flow of information between different solutions and devices. It enhances continuity of care, collaboration between healthcare providers, patient, health information, and of course reduces inefficiencies within the health system. So it's that ability of different systems and softwares to communicate with each other, and exchange standards enable the sharing of that data between clinicians, labs, hospitals, pharmacies, and systems, and to ensure that communication is achieved. And the interoperability standards that are at the terminology level is what allows for consistent data representation across the sharing of that data. So in terms of the levels, when we talk about technical interoperability, we're also talking about the foundational level of interoperability. And this is where the spokes, the nuts and bolts are sort of put in place. This is where the highway is set up for the information to be conveyed. The transport layer, and we're talking about like things like the VPNs and the APIs. So that's the basic layer of interoperability. The second layer is the syntactic or structural level. And this is where we talk about the format, the syntax, and the organization of that data that needs to be exchanged. And in terms of standards, messaging and transport standards such as HL7b2 and FHIR are two key ones that come to mind that actually facilitates this layer of interoperability. The third layer, and the layer closest to our hearts here for the terminology team at InfoA, is the semantic level. And this is where the common underlying models and codification of data, including the use of data elements within standardized definitions, are at play. So this is where the meaning of the data is actually layered on and not just about transport and exchange. So the data is unambiguous, it's represented consistently between systems, so it's reproducible, it's understandable at all times. And at this layer, this is where terminology standards are key players. And at the fourth layer, organizational level, it has to do with governance, policy, social, legal, and organizational considerations to facilitate that secure, seamless exchange of health information. And initiatives like our trust framework here at InfoWay intends to enable that level of interoperability. Next slide, please. So diving a little bit more into semantic interoperability, as I mentioned, this is a key focus for the work that we do. Structural interoperability and technical interoperability, I think we've pretty much sort of advanced use cases for that, but the semantic layer still poses a key challenge for us here in Canada. And so it's one of our key focus when we talk about disseminating terminology standards. And this example really is a common one, what data are you exchanging? What is the meaning behind it? And how do you ensure that the context of that meaning stays consistent across the disparate systems? So a cold, you could be talking about a disorder, you could be talking about exposure to an event that is cold, or you could be talking about an environment. So applying a terminology standard at that level ensures that when you're exchanging that information, there is no lost meaning. And it's important not just to exchange data, but the data needs to be meaningful and actionable. Next slide, please. Here, I'd like to touch on the value of the terminology standards to connected care. So standardized data just does not just mean seamless data exchange, but it also impacts all throughout the connected care system. So when we look across the continuum of care, there is a value added to patient and caregiver, to the clinical care team that is applying care and making decisions, care organizations when they need to organize, store, and disseminate data, population health and public health for advanced uses in ensuring safety of that data that's being exchanged and applied to population health measures, and of course for secondary purposes such as use with analytics, research, and innovation. And at the bottom of that are terminology standards, key standards like SOM CTCA and LOINC PCLOCD, which I'll touch on a little bit later on, that facilitates this sort of application of standardized data across that continuum of care. And we've shared a little video there that you can take away and peruse in your own time. Next slide, please. Scope of terminology standards. So here, I just wanted to put in focus sort of the fit for purpose paradigm for terminology. So, we always try to convey that, terminology needs to be fit for purpose. It depends on the user's goal, what do you want to achieve with the standardized data? But we also want to underpin that there are interdependencies and synergies between different terminologies to achieve that overarching result. So we should also understand how they can work together to accomplish the full scope of healthcare data exchange. And looking at the two main terminologies that we support here, that's LOINC and SNOMED CT. We always like to give the paradigm of the question answer methodology, where LOINC will ask a question around tests or measurements with this two main domain of laboratory and clinical LOINC. So anything that you can test, measure, or observe about a patient. And SNOMED CT being a richer multi-hierarchical terminology, you can have answers about the diagnoses, the problems, procedures, organisms, etc. So they actually can work hand in hand to build a fulsome sort of information picture that can be applied in patient care. Next slide, please. Showcasing some of the code systems that we actually work with and release that Tarek mentioned earlier in his presentation. So the PCLOCD is the Pan-Canadian Constraint of Laboratory LOINC. This is where we've actually localized content in LOINC for use by our Canadian stakeholders. It's released right now twice per year, both English and French to support bilingual exchange. It includes a laboratory LOINC as well as some clinical documents as well called documentology. And it's really by a measure one of our more successful implementations in Canada across different jurisdictions. Next slide, please. This is just a snapshot of some of the metrics from the last release for PCLOCD. And as you notice, we have well over 41,000 terms, representing about 38% of the core LOINC. And impressively, we're almost at 100% of translation into Canadian French, again, to ensure that we're supporting bilingual exchange. Next slide, please. And we have the SNOMED CT Canadian edition that we do support. So we are the National Release Center for SNOMED CT, as we're a founding member of the SNOMED CT terminology. It's, of course, one of the largest clinical reference terminologies in the world. We do offer concept creations in both US English and Canadian French as well. And we release this quarterly. So right now, as of our last release in February, we have over approximately 52,000 Canadian concepts, with about 45% of the concepts in the core terminology being translated at this time. And right now, the SNOMED terminology is quite large. We're at about 420,000 active French descriptions. Sorry, 189,000 French descriptions off 420,000 active concepts in the terminology. So it's quite vast, but we are building towards the bilingual component of it. Next slide, please. Again, just quickly, a few metrics from our last release, just outlining the content that's under the hood. It does include like new concepts, the number of value sets that we support, as well as the French content that's available in the terminology. And last slide, please. Sorry, just got a pop-up on my screen. Lastly, I'd just like to touch on a data exchange standard, primarily FHIR, which is what we largely support with our interoperability specs here. HL7 FHIR, it's the latest standard developed by HL7, representing sort of logical building blocks called resources that are assembled to create solutions and solve real world problems. So it really this standard is really about achieving that semantic layer of interoperability. It importantly provides a specialized terminology service where you can manage value sets, code systems that provide consistent definitions for data validation, and allows you to apply APIs and structured modular resources that are scalable. And in this picture, I'm just trying to depict a story about how information can come together by building blocks using fire with the different components. So you have a fire resource for condition, for observation, for medication, and they can all come together with with elements that are actually bound to terminology, using that terminology service module to actually tell the story about the patient. And then the fire services layer that comes in to advance the use of this terminology with operations like validating codes, expanding value sets, translating codes, subsumption rules, etc. So it provides a fulsome set of mechanisms to facilitate that. And with that, we are going to pivot into a little bit more about the interoperability standards in action, looking at some of the key initiatives. And the first one will be over to my colleague Julie to talk about the CMT.
Thank you, Janice. So it's a pleasure for me to present on the Canadian medicine terminology, the project. So thank you for the invitation. So let's begin. Next slide. Let's begin with a brief explanation of what is the Canadian medicine terminology, the CMT. So first, it's a suite of artifacts to support the creation of a Canadian SNOMED CT drug extension. SNOMED International has developed a standardized drug model to support the development of national drug extensions. So the Canadian model was therefore built upon this standard, incorporating additional enhancements to meet Canadian specific requirements. It also provides a foundation for clear and precise identification of medicinal products commonly used in the treatment of human patients across Canada. It is a multi-year phase approach initiative with an objective to deliver long-term value to the Canadian healthcare ecosystem. So I will come back to this multi-phase aspect a little later in the presentation. So finally, the CMT not only includes the Canadian SNOMED CT drug model and the medicinal product concept, but it also includes the data transformation process, the mapping rules and principles, the tooling enhancements, the customized modeling templates, and modeling editorial guidelines for representing complex drug products. So why did we choose to base this drug extension on SNOMED CT? So first, because, of course, SNOMED CT is a recognized international terminology, but also because we can build on a solid foundation with the Canadian extension, which already supports implementation in Canada for several years, including description in both English and French, as well as a clear alignment with the SNOMED CT international drug model. So with SNOMED CT, there was also great opportunities for collaboration with other SNOMED CT member countries that are developing or have already developed a drug extension. So good and very interesting discussions are taking place in this group in order to submit and try to find solutions to challenges these countries are facing. So all of this, therefore, greatly increases compatibility across different jurisdictions, but also outside the country. So not forgetting, of course, all the other advantages of using SNOMED CT that you probably already know about, such as allowing for multiple description that can be tailored to the needs of clinicians, the general public and IT system, and also it allows for early adoption of new created concepts. Slide. So the current scope of the CMT includes all Health Canada approved drug with a DIN, so drug identification number, including also hospital administered medications, regardless of their status. So it includes approved, marketed, and inactive products. And you can see on the right side what this does not include. So for example, vaccine, natural health products, disinfectant products and devices, and so on. Next slide, please. So the CMT project team is an expanded team since it is composed of representatives from Santé Québec, which is the jurisdiction who initiated the project. The ThermEd team, which provides not only the authoring tool, but also extensive SNOMED CT expertise, our indispensable advisor, who, with the help of her invaluable SNOMED CT expertise, guided and assisted us in the construction of our model. InfoWay, of course, is also a key player by supporting this project and by providing various resources. But finally, the consultation table that was set up during the project, which brings together representatives from different jurisdictions and as well as knowledge-based vendor who provide comments and guidance on various topics of discussion about the CMT. So as mentioned earlier, this is a multi-phase project. So the phase 0 was the preparatory phase aimed at establishing the foundation of the project. So it includes, among other things, editorial rules, base tables, and use cases to begin building the model. So phases 1 to 4, specific products are introduced from the simplest to the complex, the most complex, each being standardized according to the editorial and modeling rules of SNOMED CT. So you have on one side, there is the review and validation of concepts relating to the current phase. And in parallel, there is work to prepare the subsequent phase as the naming and modeling rules, which may be added as the product become more complex, as well as new functionality to the tool, which may be necessary to support new patterns. So this consistency, this ensures consistency and that medication with various formulation and ingredients are harmonized across all provincial health systems. Slide, please. So here's an example of what each of these phases entails. So for instance, in phase 1, the scope is for oral tablets and oral capsules with one single ingredient. But in parallel, work is also underway to establish the naming and modeling rules, as well as to develop the tool user interface for the next phase so that it can support more complex products, which would include all single non-parenteral products, and so on for the other phases. Please. So these are the pan-Canadian use cases that motivated the creation of the CMT model. So prescribing and dispensing are the most obvious examples. And for dispensing, we will see later that we have added classes to the model to represent containers and subpack to fully support this use case. As you can see in this slide, there are, of course, other use cases that can be addressed by the CMT model. And as examples, we have included here which class could support these different use cases. So we will see in a few moments what these classes are. And the principle was that we will add new classes to the model only if it is required by one of these use cases. Slide, please. Click. Thank you. So as we explained earlier, the Canadian model relies on and follows the international medicinal product model as closely as possible. So in the CMT, we reuse the medicinal product only and the clinical drug, but for the medicinal product form only, we do not reuse those from the international model because our use cases require more precise concept. And we do not create the two classes that you see on the left, since they are not directly required for pan-Canadian use cases. So if you click another time, please. We also reuse the concept for substance, the pharmaceutical dose form, the unit of measure, and the unit of presentation as much as possible in order to share as many concepts as possible with the international community. We also choose to adopt from the proposed national drug extension model the two classes on the right that represent the branded concepts, so the real medicinal product and the real clinical drug, and the two package classes at the bottom, the packaged clinical drug and the real packaged clinical drug. Next slide, please. So here is the Canadian medicine terminology model with the full class names in both English and French. So you can note here at the bottom of the image the addition of two classes to support dispensing use cases requiring container and sub-pack. We also added a class for trade medicinal product form so that all classes on the left side, which are the virtual class, have a mirror image on the right side, which is the branded or the real classes. So I will quickly explain the different steps of the CMT development process. So the process begins with the extraction of reference data from Health Canada's drug product database, the DPD. So these are included in different flat files, and a transformation must also take place in order to organize the data so that it is ready for the next steps. The second step is the mapping of the reference data with the Canadian edition of SNOMED City. So for this, we use Snap to SNOMED, a tool that you may already know, which is an open mapping tool provided by SNOMED International. So we therefore developed approximately 14 maps to allow us to obtain all the information necessary for the creation of the concepts. The step 3, the reference information extracted from DPD and then mapped is loaded and automatically populated in the specially designed interface interspace, which is our authoring tool that was developed specifically for this project. The step 3, is the information is now ready for pharmacists to review and add any missing information or additional details. So now step 4, modeling templates and description templates are defined for each of the 10 classes of the CMT model to make sure that the concepts creation process is done in a consistent way. And these classes have different variation with multiple axioms and multiple descriptions, like fully specified name, preferred term, in both English and French, as well as other acceptable synonyms. The step 5, so in the tool, the modeling templates and the description templates are automated to display a preview of the concepts that will be created. And this predicted inferred form can then be reviewed by the authors before the creation of the concepts. Step 6, once the CMT model preview is reviewed and approved, the concepts, their description, and their definition can then be created. So final approval will then be done once the classification process has taken place and the authors have reviewed and validated the inferred view. And finally, once the concepts are created, classified, reviewed, and approved, they can be published in the Canadian edition of SNOMED City on InfoWay's terminology server so that they can be viewed and shared by everyone. Next slide, please. So as with all projects, various challenges were encountered. So as mentioned previously, there is the format of the data coming from DPD, which required manipulation and transformation before being ready for use. The gradual development of the tool's user interface presented a real challenge for our supplier. So they didn't know in advance the appearance and functionalities that would be required at the very end. Same thing for the model, which evolves from phase to phase. The agility to manage all concurrent activities with an extended team was also a challenge. The content was not always available. The long discussion that take place when we encounter an edge case consume a lot of our time. The alignment with other countries and SNOMED International on common required attributes and values is still a challenge. And finally, the packaging data, an issue we are still working on. On the other hand, so this project has led to some great achievements. So more than 25,000 CMT concepts were created and added so far in the SNOMED CT Canadian edition. All CMT concepts are available in both French and English. The writing of a comprehensive editorial guide that is still going on. And finally, improvements that were made to the user interface to meet the needs of pattern and editorial guidelines. Right. So, however, the work is not finished. Here is an overview of what is or could still be done, remain to be done. So phases 3 and 4 are still underway at the moment, and the concept will be included in the next publication at the end of May. As mentioned, when the packaging data becomes available, the concepts corresponding to the packaging classes will need to be added, following the same rigorous development process. The maintenance process still needs to be developed and is currently under discussion. Maps and reference sets could be developed based on user requirements, and other requirements could be developed, such as natural products and devices and others. But all of this is part of the future and will be evaluated in due course. I think I'll give the place to Myriam.
Thank you, Julie. So as Dr. Bird mentioned earlier, I'll be presenting a quick overview on InfoWay support for SNOMED CT immunization content. Next slide, please. So high-quality immunization data is the fundamental backbone of public health surveillance. Currently, we're facing a significant problem where data is fragmented across various jurisdictions. So provinces and territories have their own systems and data, which leads to very limited interoperability. This fragmentation results in reporting delays, creates major challenges when we try to aggregate data at a national level. Ultimately, this creates a risk by reducing the ability to respond quickly to an urgent public health event. Next slide, please. So to address those challenges, we have established a strategic partnership between Public Health Agency of Canada, PHAC, and the Canada Health InfoWay, so CHI. PHAC really brings all the clinical context and the public health expertise, where InfoWay provides the terminology standards and all the expertise around terminology. Central to this collaboration, there is the Public Health Surveillance Community, PHSC, which is a national forum led by InfoWay to guide the development and maintenance of SNOMED CTCA and all related immunization standards. Its purpose is to support pan-Canadian standard-based electronic immunization data exchange. Next slide, please. So the key tool in this strategy is the National Vaccine Catalog. The NVC was developed by PHAC and is a publicly accessible information repository of all vaccines authorized for use in Canada. So in NVC, it includes product-specific information, such as the drug identification numbers, the DINs, vaccine lots, lot expiry dates, etc. And also it leveraged the immunization value sets developed and maintained by InfoWay, which are the standardized terminology. So both those two elements help to promote interoperability. Next slide, please. So to make sure that NVC is always up to date and answers the different Canadian requirements for immunization data collection, we will receive requests for new content, changes, updates. So either via a FAC representative or a member of the PHSC, and those requests are really to answer a direct need from the public health. So while SNOMED International provides a global foundation, the Canadian edition ensures that terminology remains relevant to the provincial health standards and also the national reporting needs. So that's the reason we created the Canadian immunization model in collaboration with NVC and PHSC. So this model really functions as an interconnected web where all the different value sets work together to provide a complete clinical picture, which is a requirement by the provinces and territories and also nationally for immunization data collection. So in other words, when we create a concept, we make sure that every piece of the immunization data is linked to that concept. So for example, when we receive a new vaccine that will be marketed in Canada, so a new trade name, we make sure that it's linked to his market authorization holder, so the MAH. It has all the antigens that are in the vaccine. It prevents for the right disease, etc. So those are the value set that are found in NVC, and really the combination of those standardized terminology via those value sets and the product-specific information that can be found in NVC really give this complete clinical picture that is required for immunization data collection in Canada. So this brings me to the next slide, and I wanted to finish this really quick presentation and give you the end-to-end data flow of the immunization information. So it starts at the vaccine manufacturer, where the vaccine is developed, and it has to go through Health Canada for approval. Once it's approved, we will receive a request, so either via a PHSC member or a FAC. We'll have to create this new concept and make sure that all the immunization data is also created at the same time. NVC aggregates all this information, so all the standardized terminology created by Infoway and all the product-specific information, and we'll distribute it to various end users via either a FHIR API or Excel downloads. So here there are some examples like electronic medical records or the PT immunization information systems or clinician and extra. So this concludes my presentation. I'm gonna leave Janice to talk to you about the terminology services and specifically about the Infoway terminology server. Thank you.
Thanks, Myriam. So for this section, we're just going to quickly end off with our terminology services by way of our FHIR server. So you've seen that we actually create a lot of content. So how do we ensure that this gets disseminated, distributed, and there is actually uptake? So we introduced a terminology server about 2 years ago, and I'll just give you a quick overview of the features and capability of the server that's providing that national service for Canada. Sorry, you were just one ahead of me. So why a FHIR server? So when we look at our digital health landscape, you see a plethora of standards, at varying levels. There's a complexity of clinical recording, and there needs to be tooling to facilitate that seamless terminology uptake of standardized data. So this is where we think the terminology server plays a key role because it provides that ability to do this at scale, both programmatically for national use to access standards such as SNOMED CTC, ELOINC, and value sets, as well as other means of access to the data, to the terminology data. It now serves as our repository for maintaining standardized healthcare terminologies and allows for those using the terminologies in their system to ensure that uniformity in data collection. So when we talk about, why it matters, we're talking about a FHIR compliant server, which is very important. As I mentioned before, FHIR having out-of-the-box FHIR terminology services, it operates as one source of truth for all national terminology artifacts. It enables smarter data sharing. Importantly, it's updated regularly and built with our Canadian stakeholders in mind. So the key valuation of the server from our perspective, and we hope that stakeholders see this value in it by uptake of the service, is that it provides the terminology at scale, allows for that collaboration. It'll act as a driver for greater national adoption of the terminology standards with pathways for advanced use of terminologies with FAR capabilities. And we're really hoping that stakeholders leverage more and more of this advanced use over time. And of course, it supports information modeling and spec development because of, the FHIR ecosystem, allowing for that terminology binding, application of FHIR operations for code systems and value sets, as well as supporting conformance validations for specs like the patient summary, e-referral, e-consult, and for testing programs such as Connect-to-Bonds. Next slide, please. The platform that it runs on, it's offered by CSIRO, and it's called OntoServer, and it's a turnkey solution. And as I mentioned, it's fully FHIR compliant, offering terminology services. So all FHIR code systems are supported. Mainly for our purposes, we leverage it to maintain and distribute national terminologies. And a key component that we also leverage is a syndication service. So that allows for our clients to ingest terminologies that are regularly updated and update data at their local level, more importantly, without the maintenance burden. And it comes with a suite of components as part of the offering. And for our presentation, I'll just go into two key components, which will be the Shrimp browser and the Onto Command admin console. Next slide, please. So you've been given an overview, a lot of the content that we support for Canada. So this is giving you sort of a lens into what's available in the server, offering terminology as a service to national stakeholders. So content includes code system releases like our SNOMED CT National Edition, the Pan-Canadian LOINC that's released several times throughout the year. Content is obtained programmatically, so that's via API queries. It can be done through system-to-system integration. As I mentioned, we have a syndication service that allows for easy uptake of the code systems that you are using in your jurisdictional or local systems. And importantly, we also allow for content to be consumed in human readable formats, which I'll go into a little bit next. And more importantly as well, we offer value set, Pan-Canadian value set that constrain the terminology for fit for purpose use cases. And these value sets are based on multiple code systems like SNOMED CTCA, HL7, UCOM, and LOINC. Next slide, please. Very quickly, this is a snapshot of the Shrimp, which is the browsing interface for OntoServer. So think of it as similar to the SI browser, only that it offers a more full context view of the content in the server, particularly from the value set view. You can search your value sets here, and it gives you a visual aid of where the concepts that you're searching sits in the value set, as well as showing you the full hierarchy as well. And we also offer a language toggle in this browser that you can toggle between English and French that we've actually added on as a feature for our Canadian stakeholders. And in each of these slides, there are demo videos that you can please feel free to go in and take a deeper look into the service that we offer. And next slide, please. Onto Command is the component of the Onto server that you can interact with the FHIR resources that we have available. So it's really what we treat as the administrative console. And this is where you come in to manage things like code systems, value sets, as well as the syndication feed. And you can also launch the Shrimp browser from this console. So it enables you to browse, explore, and download the terminology content that we have available. And resources like code system, value sets, concept map, for example, can be accessed here. In terms of functionality, we've been able to add enhanced functionality that did not come out of the box to meet our stakeholder needs. And that includes like downloading content, comparing content between code systems and value sets. And although we recognize that the key driver of a FHIR-enabled terminology service is to allow that more programmatic consumption of terminology, um, that makes your systems keep as up to date to underlying standards as possible. We recognize that not everybody's at that place, so we offered human readable downloads in easy to use formats such as Excel, as well as in FHIR formats like JSON and XML. So this is something that we've added layered on directly from the admin console that you can consume these artifacts as well. And again, we have a demo there for you. And next slide, please. So quickly, who are our target users? Of course, content managers who want to browse content that we have through the interface, through the browsing interface will be key stakeholder here. Information modelers and spec developers, of course, we use this for FHIR compliance and to validate terminology against specs, as well as for more advanced use like leveraging SNOMED-CT for decision support and advanced analytics. So this is where like vendors and researchers would come into play. And next slide, please. So in terms of the benefits realization of the terminology service, we wanted to highlight some of the national initiatives that are leveraging the service now. So applications that have integrated with the server to query and consume terminologies like SNOMED-CT and the value sets that we offer. So yesterday you would have learned about the Pan-Canadian Health Data Content Framework. So they leverage a lot of our content to bind terminology in that data standard, as well as the derivative CACDI, which is the Canadian Core Data for Interoperability. A lot of the defined Pan-Canadian value sets are published or will be published via our terminology service. CCDD, which is the Canadian Clinical Drug Dataset, is another national code system that is provided for dissemination through a service. And of course, Myriam just went over the National Vaccine Catalog. So they leverage our service to facilitate that consistent documentation by having a real-time syndication link to our service so that their catalog can be frequently updated. And I think I just wanted to end off with this section by just pointing out that we are also really hooked into the HL7 ecosystem. So it's not just our standalone service, but we have integrations with the FHIR validators. So larger spec development work, developers, implementation initiatives can actually make use of the service as well. And lastly, just a few resources that I've provided here for you to take away if you'd like to learn more, get access to the server, and just browse the information that we've shared today as part of the overview of the standards that we offer. So thank you. And I think we move on to our next section.
Yes.
We're
Thank you
connected
so
here.
much, Janice, Julie, and Myriam. Much appreciated.